My name's Alex. This took place years back, a memory I'd buried until it resurfaced not long ago. I was 17 that summer, slinging pizzas at a joint on the edge of my small hometown. It wasn't my dream job, but with no cash and parents who'd have grounded me for life if I was jobless, I didn't have much choice. It was one of those gigs you grab when no one else is hiring, long, dull shifts, greasy aprons, and a delivery car that coughed its way through every trip. At least I wasn't burning out my own ride. That would have been the worst. Oh, and I should mention, the pizza was straight up awful. I mean, truly bad. I never got why anyone bothered ordering from us. If it weren't for the decent Wi-Fi and a half-decent vibe inside, I swear we'd have had zero customers. That place was the one thing I didn't miss about my hometown, and that's saying a lot. The only perk was that, whether it was the terrible food or our location way out on the fringes, we barely got orders. Most nights were dead silent. I won't drag you through the boring routine of my shifts. It was a pizza shop. You can probably imagine the drill. One night, I was restocking sodas in the cooler when the tablet pinged with an online order. A large pepperoni and mushroom pizza. That stood out because we hardly ever got mushroom requests. The address was way out in the boonies, just beyond our delivery range. I was about to cancel it, as usual, but my manager, a guy in his 30s named Derek, who mostly lounged in the back swiping through his phone, glanced over and told me to take it. We hadn't had a delivery in over an hour, he said. I didn't bother arguing. When the pizza was done, I punched the address into my GPS, grabbed the box, and headed out. It'd eat up 30 or 40 minutes at least. As I was about to leave, I glanced at the delivery instructions Derek had printed and taped to the box, which I hadn't really checked until then. They read, clear as day, park on the back street, walk through the yard, knock only on the back door. It gave me pause, but my teenage brain came up with a dozen reasons why someone might want that. Maybe they didn't want to disturb a sleeping kid or grandparent. Maybe their front door was busted. Maybe they were hiding the order from someone in the house. Could have been anything, really. Plus, the night was dragging, and I wasn't thrilled about folding pizza boxes for hours. So I just shrugged it off and did my job. But the moment I stepped outside, doubts crept in. It was one of those muggy summer nights where the air felt thick, like wading through warm syrup. No breeze, just this heavy, stagnant heat. There was this gross, musty smell like damp cardboard and baked earth that hit me hard. I hate that smell more than anything, but there was no escaping it. I rolled the windows down for maybe a minute before cranking the AC. The address wasn't toward the town center. It was the opposite direction, even farther out than our already remote shop. The drive was supposed to take about 25 minutes, but it felt longer with the empty roads stretching out ahead. I'm probably making it sound more desolate than it was. There were houses here and there, but they got sparser the farther I went. When I finally reached the address, I realized I'd pulled up behind the house. The GPS had taken me to a narrow side street, running along a row of backyards. No street lights, no porch lights, just darkness. I slowed down, double-checking the house number because the place looked abandoned. No lights on, no cars out front. Just a scruffy backyard with tall grass and a flimsy fence that didn't even latch properly. Still, I followed the instructions. I parked on the gravel shoulder, grabbed the pizza, and trudged up the slope to the back door, holding the box in one hand and my phone's flashlight in the other, aiming at the ground so I wouldn't trip. When I reached the door, it was one of those old ones with a little window at the top, covered by a thin curtain. I knocked and waited. Nothing. I knocked again, knowing Derek would lose it if I came back with the pizza. After no answer, I raised my hand to knock a third time when I saw the curtain twitch. Just a slight flick, like someone nudged it. It was quick, and I might have missed it if I hadn't been staring. I stood there, expecting whoever was clearly right behind the door to open it. But then I noticed two unmarked cars pull up on the side street behind my car. My first thought was that I'd messed up, maybe parked somewhere I shouldn't have. One of the car doors opened and a guy stepped out. In the glow of the other car's headlights, I could see he was waving me over. I figured he was the customer, maybe just getting home, so I started walking toward him. But as I got closer, he flashed something in his hand, a badge. The guy was an undercover cop, dressed in plain clothes, no uniform. When I got near, he told me to go back to my car and wait. That was it, no explanation. So I did. I backed off, slid into the driver's seat, and watched. That's when I realized it wasn't just two cops. There were at least 5, maybe more. They moved quietly, flashlights in hand, circling the house like they didn't want to be spotted. None of them knocked or called out, which struck me as odd. It was a weird scene. I saw one officer try the back door handle, the same one I knocked on, gently like he was testing it. When it didn't budge, he nodded to another guy and stepped back. It felt like I'd stumbled into something I wasn't meant to see, and I guess I had. Eventually, the first cop came back to my car and leaned down by the window. I rolled it down, and he glanced at the pizza box on the seat, letting out a quick sigh. He was cagey, but didn't seem like a jerk, just someone trying to keep things under wraps. He said the house was part of an ongoing investigation, and they were staking it out. He apologized for not stepping in sooner, saying I'd pulled up right when they were moving their cars. I offered to show him the delivery order, and he nodded. I pulled up on the app, but it didn't seem to help much. Just a phone number, the address, and a first name Mike. The cop jotted down the number, then told me to get out of there fast. I grumbled about how Derek was going to chew me out for bringing the pizza back, and the cop just gave a half shrug, repeated that I needed to leave, and walked off. I was annoyed, but what could I do? I drove back. The whole ride, it started sinking in. I didn't fully process how serious it was until I parked back at the shop. If those cops hadn't shown up when they did, something bad could have gone down. I don't even know what. The more I mulled it over, the more I realized the only reason that door didn't open was probably because the cops were there. Why would someone order a pizza during a stakeout? Maybe they didn't know they were being watched. Or maybe they did, and I was some kind of decoy to test if the cops were covering that side of the house. The curtain twitched, the silence, the timing, it all fell off. I'll never get answers, and honestly, dwelling on it feels pointless. I'd completely forgotten about it until a buddy from high school brought it up recently. This happened last summer. I'm 40 now, married with 2 daughters, ages 8 and 6. I work in finance, which isn't exciting but keeps us comfortable. And at this stage, that's what matters most. A few years back, my father passed after a tough fight with illness. He left us a small beach cottage in Maryland, a place I'd never visited since he rented it out year-round. It's modest but perfectly located, just a block from the shore. My favorite spot is the upstairs deck with its stunning view of the waves. After his passing, we started visiting every summer, making it our family's getaway. A weekend here, a week there, it became our tradition. My wife and I cherish it, but our girls, they're obsessed. They'll spend hours building sandcastles, biking around, or wandering the town. It feels like a treasure my dad left for us. This story is from one of those trips last July, a Sunday to Friday stay when the beach crowds ease up midweek. It was a Wednesday night, I remember vividly. The girls were fast asleep by 9:30, wiped out from a day in the sun. My wife and I were on the deck, playing cards and sharing a bottle of wine. That's when our older daughter, Emma, stepped out, looking unsettled. She said she kept hearing a scratching noise in her room, and it was keeping her awake. I exchanged a look with my wife, set my glass down, and told Emma I'd check it out. I asked my wife to stay put. The house is old, so I figured it was just creaks or pipes. The girls have separate rooms, so I didn't see a need to wake our younger one. I followed Emma downstairs to her room, where she pointed at the wall by her bed and hushed me to listen. We stood there quietly, and at first I heard nothing. I didn't want her to feel dismissed, so I waited. After about 20 seconds, there it was, faint but unmistakable, a soft scratching, just as she'd said. I knelt down, ear to the wall near the baseboard. It wasn't like critters in the attic. It sounded like it was inside the wall, low to the floor. Then I heard breathing. Not animal-like, human. Deep, deliberate breaths. I jerked back, muttering a startled God under my breath. Then, I swear, a raw, furious scream erupted from inside the wall. It hit me like a punch, this wave of pure dread. I shouted again, grabbed Emma's hand, and pulled her out of the room. We raced down the hall to grab our younger daughter, Lily, who was still asleep. I didn't wait for her to wake up, just scooped her up and bolted. My only thought was getting to my wife on the deck. As we hit the stairs, I yelled for her. Another scream rang out behind us, closer now, too close. I spun around and saw a man, covered in grime, charging down the hall toward us. I almost stumbled racing up the stairs with both girls, but we made it to the deck. I slammed the sliding door shut just as he crashed into it, the glass shaking so hard I thought it'd break. He clawed at it like a wild animal, screaming and pounding, shouting things too vile to repeat. I pressed my body against the door, yelling for my wife to take the girls and call 911. She pulled them back, shielding their ears. I locked eyes with him, trying to block his view of my family. He was feral, unhinged, smearing something, dirt, maybe blood, across the glass as he tried to force his way in. I held that door with everything I had. It felt like forever, maybe a minute, maybe 5. He didn't stop, not once. All I could think was protect them. I was ready to fight if the glass gave way. But then the police arrived. I didn't see them approach, but suddenly 2 officers were inside, tackling the man from behind. Another helped cuff him. The night blurred after that. Once they dragged him to a squad car, the officers took my statement. We searched the house to figure out how he'd gotten in. Turns out, there was a hidden crawl space I didn't know about, accessible through a panel under the back deck you'd never notice unless you were looking. It connected to a narrow space along the foundation, with another entry through a loose board in Emma's closet. I'd never explored the house fully when we inherited it. Didn't think I needed to. A few days later, a detective called with more details. The man confessed he'd been living in the crawl space for months, sneaking in during the off-season. He saw the house as his and planned to hurt us for invading. He'd been stealing food from our kitchen and nearby bins, which we hadn't noticed. We stayed away the rest of the summer, not out of fear, but because the trauma was too raw. My wife and kids didn't argue. I hired a crew to seal the crawl space for good. This summer, we've gone back, and things feel almost normal again, or as close as they'll ever get. I grew up in a quiet, rural place where you could pedal for miles without crossing paths with anyone. Summer was always my favorite season, and it still is, though it's not quite the same since I moved to the city. There was something magical about summer in the countryside. The warmth, the stillness, the vast emptiness. It's hard to describe, but it felt like I had my own private world, free and untouched. I could vanish for hours, and no one would notice. Summer nights were the best, wrapping me in a sense of solitude and liberty I craved as a kid. I was 16 then. My friend Jamie was my partner in crime, always a bit bolder than me, nudging boundaries in her own way. One July night, we decided to go stargazing. Just the 2 of us, our bikes, and a bottle of cheap wine. It wasn't our first adventure like this. We'd done it plenty of times. But after what happened that night, it was one of our last. We didn't have a set plan, just a vague idea to try a new spot since our usual places felt stale. Jamie said she knew a perfect location, a deserted patch of farmland beyond town where no one would bother us. We set out around 10 p.m., biking for maybe 20 or 30 minutes until civilization faded away. Jamie stopped suddenly, declaring we'd arrived. I didn't see anything special, just an open field, no houses, no fences, just grass stretching under a sky full of stars. It felt ideal. We laid out a blanket, popped open the wine with the corkscrew Jamie had remembered to bring, and settled in. The wine was terrible, but it did the trick. We lounged there, passing the bottle, naming the few constellations we knew. Our mission, like always, was to catch a shooting star. Jamie asked if I thought we'd see one, and I said probably not, but to keep watching. Even without a meteor, it was a perfect night. The wine was hitting, and I felt myself sinking into a tipsy haze. It was one of those nights where time seemed to dissolve, like the world paused just for us. This isn't crucial to the story, but it's a moment that stuck with me. At one point, Jamie gave me this look, intense, like she was searching for something more than our usual friendship. I'd always wondered about her feelings, but it was never more than a hunch. That night, though, it felt stronger, almost tangible. I didn't say anything. Where we grew up, those things weren't openly discussed. Maybe I was just drunk, misreading her glance. The moment passed. We laughed about something silly, and then Jamie gasped, pointing at a shooting star slicing across the sky. If you've ever seen one, you know the rush. It makes you laugh or yell into the night. We burst into giggles, and Jamie told me to make a wish. I can't recall what I wished for, probably something goofy. We leaned back, chatting, our spirits lifted by the meteor. I closed my eyes for a second, not to sleep, just to feel the cool breeze and soak in the quiet. I swear my eyes were shut for no more than 5 seconds. But when I opened them, Jamie was gone. Completely gone. Not off taking a break or checking her phone. Her and her bike had vanished, while mine was still right beside the blanket. I bolted upright, thinking she was pranking me. I spun around, scanning the field, but she was nowhere. Panic hit me like a wave. The open field, once comforting, felt oppressive, like it was closing in. The stars seemed duller, the air sharper, colder in a way that didn't feel natural. It's hard to explain, but it was like the world had shifted into something unfamiliar. I checked my phone, 3 a.m. exactly. That time is seared into my brain. It hadn't even been midnight moments ago. I stared at the screen, blinking, wondering if I'd somehow dozed off. But I knew I hadn't. Would Jamie really ditch me like that? No way, not in a million years. I stood, shouting her name, spinning in circles but got no response. My mind raced for answers. Maybe she got mad and left, but why? We hadn't fought. The night had been great. I called her phone over and over. Nothing. Tears came next. What else could I do? I grabbed my bike and pedaled home, heart pounding, the ride feeling endless and terrifying. I didn't stop until I collapsed in my driveway, breathless, still clueless about what happened. I crashed into bed. The next morning, I texted Jamie, expecting an apology or at least some clarity. Instead, she was furious, demanding, "Where did you go last night?" I told her my side, waking up alone at 3 a.m., thinking she'd left me. Then she floored me. She said she woke up alone at 3 a.m., and I was gone. She waited over an hour, then biked home, pissed and confused, thinking I'd ditched her. She swore I vanished, just as I swore she did. We went back and forth, trying to make sense of it, but nothing fit. Neither of us had memory gaps beyond that moment. We both remembered calling each other, but our phone log showed no missed calls. Eventually, we let it go, or at least stopped talking about it. But we were both shaken, more than we'd admit. For months, I'd stare at the stars from my window, replaying that night. Jamie and I barely stargazed after that, maybe once or twice. Life moved on, but I've never found an explanation. People I tell this to always say it's something supernatural, and maybe they're right, but I don't like thinking that way. I've wondered if Jamie lied, but why? Even now, I get this uneasy feeling that something happened that night we'll never understand. I haven't spoken to Jamie in years, but I'd bet she still thinks about that strange summer night in the field.